Хлопці, сили немає, поки воно буде, і що воно це таке, непонятно. Жили. Непонятно, що воно таке.
А вы в подвале сейчас?
Да, а где живем, спим там и едим.
А вода в городе есть?
А? Воды редко бежит, еле-еле. Света не было, дня 4 не было вообще. Ни газа нет. Что зимой делать, мы не знаем.
Tomorrow we are gonna bring it more, okay?
Завтра ми більше привеземо.
Today was the first contact.
New people in front line stay without houses and stay without jobs. We have to continue this on a daily basis. It's difficult, of course, it's expensive when we talk about such big territories.
We have this feeling of being slightly forgotten, but that's normal. And I don't feel bad about that. I just don't understand that people get tired out of seeing all these wartime pictures, news and so on. For us it means that we have to keep running, we have to stand, and we have to find a way how we can be more loud to make those people hear us.
Ukrainians are feeding Ukrainians. Just through food, one plate of food at a time, with dignity. We're going to make sure that going towards winter, we are going to be near those people that, because lack of electricity, lack of heat, are going to need help of organizations like World Central Kitchen.
It's not electricity in many places. It's going to be a brutal winter. I was here already in February, March. Even in April was snowing, was freezing cold, without electricity, without heat. We're going to have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, that they're going to suffer.
На сьогодні фонд VCK вже планує, як буде допомагати людям взимку. Отже, перш за все, планується закупити генератори, щоб у пунктах видачі пакетів були якісь місця для обігріву людей. Також плануємо роздавати гарячі напої, то каву та чай. Також плануємо робити якісь, можливо, соціальні кухні, де люди отримуватимуть гарячий обід, а також зможуть провести якийсь час та зігрітися.
We can say that being Ukrainian is a real superpower.
When we come to people who don't have anything left with a plate of hot, fresh food, they see that there is someone who can take care of them, that there is someone who cares.
The most important thing is to giving hope people that they can survive these really tough months here, and they can survive this, and they can reach the moment when the Ukraine will be free.
Watching actual videos of the Tesla full self-driving technology as recorded by the drivers. From turning too tightly and hitting a pylon to swerving toward a pole.
Jesus!
Watch the bicyclist on the right almost get hit before the driver takes over. Sometimes it seems the Tesla doesn't want the driver to take over.
I'm trying.
This driver had to hit the brakes when the Tesla didn't understand a detour sign.
Yeah, okay.
Here it almost hit a truck.
Obviously I had to take over.
And here it swerves into an oncoming lane.
Look at that.
Often the Tesla doesn't know what it wants to do.
What is it doing?
Or just doesn't know how to turn.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
What do you think Elon Musk's full self-driving Tesla will do when there's a child in a crosswalk?
It doesn't even slow down.
We ran the test again, watched the onboard footage. The test was conducted on a real street with a real crosswalk outside a school in Santa Barbara, California. The child-sized mannequin was dressed in a safety vest to make it as visible as possible. There were no cones, there was room to swerve, and you can clearly see the accelerator. Full self-driving mode is engaged, the accelerator is not pressed, and the Tesla's display does not register the child. The Tesla runs down the child-sized mannequin. Full self-driving disengages after striking the mannequin at 24 miles per hour.
Tesla's full self-driving software. For drivers and pedestrians, it's unsafe at any speed.
This is the town of Jorhat in the remote northeast of India. My name is Jitu Kalita, and Jorhat is where I was born and where I live. A few kilometers north of Jorhat lies one of the largest rivers in India, the Brahmaputra. Millions of people live along its shores. Every year, during the monsoon, the river floods everything in sight, destroying homes and farms and eroding away hundreds of square kilometers of land. One of the worst affected areas is Majuli Island. Majuli is the world's largest river island, and it's home to over 150,000 people. Since 1917, Majuli has lost over half its landmass to erosion, and the rate of erosion has recently accelerated. Scientists recently announced that in 15-20 years, Majuli Island could be completely gone. The Brahmaputra is where I take most of my photos. One day in 2009, I was exploring a barren part of the Brahmaputra by boat when I saw something strange. I had found a dense forest in the middle of a barren wasteland. When I left the forest, I saw a man far in the distance, so I began following him. I found him by the riverside. I asked him what he was doing in the forest. He explained that he was planting trees and that he had been since the 1970s. He told me his name was Jadav Payeng. When I discovered the Jadav Payeng and his forest, I wrote an article about it in the local newspaper. Soon after, he became known throughout India.
Mane prothom mane jibonoloi koyai nise aru nigoniye manuhor শস্য লোকচান কৰে বুলি প্লাই হি মানুহ সহায় কৰিব এটো আপুনা এটো 79 ত স্টার্টিং কৰিছে তাৰ আগতে হেতু প্ৰস্তুত কৰে হেতু যে 550 হেক্টৰ যে আছে বুলি কৈছো এটো গছ গছনিয়ে পৰিপূৰ্ণ এইবিলাক এতিয়া মানে আগত যদি অলমান দেৰিতে লৈছিল এতিয়া ফটাফট কৰিব পৰা ব্যৱস্থাটো আছে ইয়াত যেটো গুটি সংগটো ইয়াৰ পৰাই লব পাৰি হেৰিয়াল গছ গছনিবোৰ ডাঙৰ হ'বলৈ ধৰিল লাহে লাহে ডাঙৰ হ'ল তেতিয়া ৰক্ষণাবেক্ষণটো অকলে দিব নোৱাৰি মানুহৰ পৰাই দিব নোৱাৰি কাৰণ মানুহেটো ডাঙৰ হৈ গ'লে এটো কাটিব ব্যৱসায়মুখী হ'ব ব্যৱসায়মুখীলৈ গছবোৰ মুকলি কৰি দিব তেতিয়া এই সাপবিলাক নিৰাপত্তা নহ'ব গছ এতিয়া সেইখন হাবিত অত্যন্ত অৰণ্য হোৱাৰ কাৰণে 115টা হাতী তাতে 3 মাহ দিন থাকে আৰু সেইদৰে গড় থাকে হৰিণা থাকে বাঘ থাকে বিভিন্ন 40 বছৰ মূৰত এই বছৰ শগুন দেখিছোঁ বিভিন্ন প্ৰজাতিৰ চৰাই সেইকাৰণে প্ৰাণীকুল জীৱ-জন্তুবিলাক বা মানুহে এবিধ প্ৰজাতিয়ে একেহে জীৱটো একেই একো প্ৰজাতিহে এটা মানুহ প্ৰজাতিয়ে বিশেষ একো চেঞ্জ নহয় অকল কাপোৰ পিন্ধিব জানে তাৰ বাহিৰেতো একো নাজানে কালি মাৰিব ৰাক্ষসটো নাই মানুহে ৰাক্ষস সব মানুহে খায় সাপো খায় বেঙো খায় একো নাবাচে মানে
When I asked him if he thought Majuli could be saved, he replied, yes.
যিকিদিন থাকিম গছকে ৰুম আৰু এইবোৰ ফিল আপ কৰিব যোৱা ডিষ্ট্ৰিক্টটো যদি ফিল আপ কৰিব পাৰোঁ তাক কোনোবা কাটিবলৈ মোকে কাটিলোঁ এইবোৰ কাটিলে কি লাভ আছে প্ৰতিবাদমুখী হ'লেও মই মানে বুজাই দিওঁ গছেতো ঘৰ ভাঙিব নাযায়
And lift off.
Yeah, it's only a robot, but she becomes a family member.
Our whole objective was to build 2 solar-powered rovers that could survive 3 months on Mars.
And the pressure on the team is really phenomenal. Was Mars once a green world with living things and blue oceans?
This is the very first time we breathe life into the rover. It's just a box of wires, right? But you end up with this cute-ish-looking robot that has a face. Oh, it's alive! It's time to fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are privileged to be in one of the most exciting rooms on Earth at the moment.
Rover Diary. The signal from the vehicle is solid and strong. Opportunity is on Mars.
What do we do next?
Let's hit the road, pedal to the metal, and go see Mars. We see these dust devils, and we were concerned that would be the way that she died.
Mars was a spacecraft graveyard when we flew.
I don't think anyone expected the rover to survive all these disasters. You get this feeling of we're basically invincible. Through this robot, we are on this incredible adventure together.
Humans are capable of forming a connection and a bond to a robot.
She rewrote the history books.
Good night, Opportunity. Well done.
In 1835, the government of the United States and the Cherokee Nation signed the Treaty of New Echota, which forced our ancestors to give up their homelands and move west on the Trail of Tears. Today, people remember that dark chapter in our nation's history, where 1/4 of the Cherokee Nation population perished. But they may not know that the same treaty promise that was used to remove the Cherokee Nation also guaranteed the tribe a right to send a delegate to Congress. For 2 centuries, Congress has failed to honor that promise. However, the Treaty of New Echota has no expiration date. The obligation to seat a Cherokee Nation delegate is as binding today as it was in 1835. In 2019, I nominated Kim Teehee as Cherokee Nation's first ever delegate. She's a former White House senior policy advisor for Native American affairs and has extensive experience working in the halls of Congress. She'll be a strong and effective advocate for all Native Americans.
We're a people, and just as everybody else has a voice in Congress or Senate, we need to have one.
Not only is it beneficial, but it would make us proud because, again, it's someone that will help fight for our water resources, our health, our sanitation, also the opioid crisis, which has affected Indian country.
Anything that we do that helps our tribe also helps other Native peoples as well.
It's really groundbreaking, and it's also really historical for indigenous populations everywhere.
I think back at the ancestors who lost their lives and who survived the Trail of Tears, my ancestors, as I think back at what they went through in order for this particular treaty provision to have never been fulfilled. And so to have Congress take action to finally seat the delegate would be a tremendous honor, but also would show that the United States keeps its word. We often get asked, why now? Why 200 years? Well, it's because forced removal means all that we had developed in the East, all that wealth, the housing, all of that, we had nothing when we came here. Look at the time it took for the Cherokee Nation post-removal to rebuild itself. It's important to the Cherokee Nation that Congress seats its delegate to Congress this year.
Every animal has its own sensory world, its own thin slice of the fullness of reality that it can detect. Evolution has shaped the senses of animals according to their needs, but no animal can sense everything. No animal is perfect at everything. There is so much information out there that to be able to detect it all would be an overwhelming experience and also unnecessary. When you really think about the senses, you do start to understand the very different kinds of information that those senses offer their owners. For most animals, taste is about food. It's about trying to work out whether something is worth eating or not. And for humans, food is something that we put in our mouths. But if you're a very small animal, food can be something you land on. And which is why for many insects, taste buds are things that are found in their feet as well as in their mouths. I, like most of you, have two eyes. They sit in the front of my face and they point forwards, which means that my visual world is always in front of me and I walk into it. But most birds have eyes on the sides of their heads, which means their visual world is around them. They often have close to wraparound vision, seeing to the sides and also a little bit to the back. And that kind of wraparound vision is really hard to wrap your head around. So a sea otter has very sensitive paws. They don't look very sensitive, they look like these weird sort of cauliflowery mittens. They have a sense of touch that is equal to our exquisitely sensitive fingertips. One of the key differences is that they are also extremely skilled at using that sense of touch. They're very fast about making touch-based decisions. A sea otter will dive down into the ocean and very quickly root around with its paws. It will grab that sea urchin, yoink that clam, and then rise to the surface before eating its food. A sea otter doesn't have the benefit of blubber that a whale or a walrus might have. It has very thick fur, but it can find enough food to eat because it has not only very sensitive hands, but very fast hands too. Even in a completely dark room, where the very large eyes of an owl might not be of much use, they can still hear, and they hear really well. The dish of feathers around an owl's face that gives it that distinctive owly look acts as a radar dish, funneling sound towards its ears. Those ears are incredibly sensitive, but they also have a unique trick that allows the owl to work out exactly where sound is coming from. Based on when sound arrives at my ears, whether it first arrives at the left or the right, I can tell where a sound is coming from in the horizontal plane. I can't do that trick in the vertical very well because my ears are level with each other, so sound arrives at both of them from above or below at the same time. An owl solves this problem because its ears are offset, so they're asymmetrical, so one ear is slightly higher than the other, and when sound arrives at that ear first, the owl knows where in the vertical plane its target is, and that's why an owl in the dark can land exactly on a mouse. It's why owls in the wild can bust through snow to pick up scurrying rodents that they couldn't even see. One of the primary uses of scent in the animal kingdom is for navigation, for finding your way around a landscape. A lot of seabirds, the group known as tube noses, use the odorscapes of the ocean to find food. Underwater features like mountains and valleys leads to concentrations of nutrients, which then concentrate food, plankton, and then krill, the kinds of things that a seabird might eat. And so the ocean has this undulating odorscape, odors that reveal the concentration of possible food, and then areas of no scent that reveal scarcity in the deep animals. I think that when I get to empathize with the smell world of a dog or the touch world of a sea otter, I feel like I'm traveling, like I'm leaving the confines of my own body and my own lived experience and going on this fantastical voyage into the world of another creature.
नौदा भक्ति में तो प्रथम भक्ति स्वयं प्रभु राम कहते हैं कि प्रथम भक्ति संतन कर संगा, कि भक्ति की शुरुआत ही संतों के सानिध्य से होती है। अगर हम अपने जीवन का विश्लेषण करें तो हम सबकी जीवन की कहानी भिन्न भिन्न कहानियां नहीं हैं। अगर हम देखें, हम सब इस संसार में जन्मे, जब संसार में जन्मे तो संसार की रीति रिवाजों से, संसार की कामनाओं इच्छाओं से हम अपरिचित थे। कितनी विभिन्न विभिन्न भाषाएं यहाँ बोली जाती है, हम भाषाओं से अपरिचित थे। जिस धर्म में हमने अब जन्म लिया उस धर्म से हम अपरिचित थे। लेकिन हम देखते हैं कि जैसे जैसे हम बड़े हुए हैं, हमारे अंदर ही चेतना की शक्ति ने हमें क्या कुछ नहीं दिया। एक असहाय बच्चा जो कल रो सकता था, आज ही समाज में बहुत बड़ा डॉक्टर बना है या समाज का बहुत बड़ा वकील बना है या समाज में बहुत बड़ा इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट बना है। तो अगर हम देखें कि मानव के जीवन के अंदर वो क्या अद्भुत शक्ति है जो एक समय हमारे पास कुछ भी नहीं है, लेकिन उस शक्ति के आधार पर एक प्राणी जो बोल नहीं सकता, जो कह नहीं सकता, सुन नहीं सकता, समझ नहीं सकता, लेकिन उस प्राणी मात्र के अंदर चैतन्य के प्रभाव से इतनी शक्ति जागृत होती है कि वही असहाय बालक आगे जाकर के अद्भुत से अद्भुत कर्म करता है। और आज हम देखें विज्ञान की कसौटी पर मानव ने क्या कुछ नहीं पाया है। तो कहने का अभिप्राय यह है कि जो सबसे अद्भुत शक्ति जो हमारे जीवन को अग्रसर कर रही है, आगे बढ़ा रही है, वो शक्ति हमसे परे नहीं है। क्योंकि अगर वो शक्ति हमसे परे होती तो बताइए कि एक बालक जो जन्म लेता है, जो बोल नहीं सकता, उसके अंदर बोलने की शक्ति कहां से आई। हम समझ नहीं सकते दीन दुनिया की चीजों को, लेकिन धीरे धीरे हमारे अंदर समझ आती है, उम्र के साथ बहुत से विवेक हमारे अंदर जागृत होता है। तो यही महापुरुष समझाते हैं, क्योंकि आदिकाल से मानव ने अपने आप को समझने की एक खोज शुरू की है। सबसे पुराना जो ज्ञान है वो था मानव अपने आप को जानो, मैन नो दाई सेल्फ। और अगर देखा जाए 3 शब्दों का ये एक संदेश है, अपने आप को जानो। तो क्या चीज जो आप अपने बारे में नहीं जानते? क्या आप अपना नाम नहीं जानते? क्या आप अपने घर का पता नहीं जानते? मतलब क्या जानने की बात कही गई? तो महान पुरुष हमें बार बार यही समझाते हैं कि एक आघात शक्ति जो हमारे अंदर विद्यमान है चैतन्य स्वरूप के रूप में, उसको हम नहीं जानते, उससे हम अपरिचित हैं। और वेदों और शास्त्रों में तो दुख का कारण ही न जानना कहा, अज्ञानता। एक बार ऐसी सभा हो रही थी, आदि गुरु शंकराचार्य जी बैठे हुए थे। तो आदि गुरु शंकराचार्य जी से उनके शिष्य लोग प्रश्न करते हैं कि बार बार आप जब कोई अपना उपदेश या संदेश हमें सुनाते हैं तो आप बार बार ये समझाते हैं कि संसार एक बंधन है, जीवन एक बंधन है, प्रभावों का बंधन है, सुख दुख का बंधन है। लेकिन आप हमें यह बताइए कि इस बंधन का तोड़ क्या है? हम भी जानते हैं हम संसार में जन्मे हैं, एक दिन हमें संसार से जाना है, परिस्थितियों में हम बंधे हुए हैं। लेकिन अगर बंधन में बंधना ही जीवन का उद्देश्य होता तो हम सब तो अपने जीवन के उद्देश्यों को पूरा कर चुके हैं, हम सब किसी ना किसी रूप में बंधे हुए हैं। लेकिन जीवन का सार अगर इससे परे है तो वो क्या चीज है जो हमें बंधन से परे ले जाएगी? तो आदि गुरु शंकराचार्य जी एक ही बात कहते हैं, वो कहते हैं दुख का कारण है अज्ञानता, और अज्ञानता का तोड़ केवल ज्ञान है।
Trees may look like solitary individuals, but the ground beneath our feet tells a different story. Trees are secretly talking, trading, and waging war on one another. They do this using a network of fungi that grow around and inside their roots. The fungi provide the trees with nutrients, and in return they receive sugars. But scientists have found this connection runs far deeper than first thought. By plugging into the fungal network, trees can share resources with each other. The system has been nicknamed the Wood Wide Web. It's thought that older trees, fondly known as mother trees, use this fungal network to supply shaded seedlings with sugars, giving them a better chance of survival. Those trees that are sick or dying may dump their resources into the network, which might then be used by healthier neighbours. Plants also use fungi to send messages to one another. If they're attacked, they can release chemical signals through their roots, which can warn their neighbours to raise their defences. But like our internet, the Wood Wide Web has its dark side too. Some orchids hack the system to steal resources from nearby trees. And other species, like the black walnut, spread toxic chemicals through the network to sabotage their rivals. Arboreal cybercrime aside, scientists are still debating why plants seem to behave in such an altruistic way. The hidden network creates a thriving community between individuals. When you're next in woodland, you might like to think of trees as part of a big superorganism, chatting and swapping information and food under your feet.
The Humanity 1 rescue ship was still in port Wednesday, but without its passengers after a climb down by the Italian government. 250 people, mostly Africans, were finally allowed to disembark from the boat and a second vessel, the Geo Barents, after being stranded in the Sicilian port of Catania since Saturday. Until Tuesday, the Italian government said they were not vulnerable enough to enter the country, but late in the evening they were unexpectedly allowed to leave.
It's a victory for human rights campaigners and the rescue ship's captains who would refuse to sail away with them on board.
It's in this case a victory that we showed that the right is on our side, that we're not doing something illegal, and that this decree which was brought against us was illegal, and that these actions in the last 14 days were not correct.
Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni came to power on a promise to crack down hard on illegal migration. Neither she nor any government minister has explained the reasons behind the about turn, but it's believed internal and external pressure came to bear.
We are on the edge, and I think the government is moving on a very complicated path, respecting the EU, not upsetting the EU, and at the same time trying to do what he was voted for.
People aboard the Humanity One has started a hunger strike in a desperate bid to be admitted to the country. The question now is, will the government abandon its tough stance or approach it in a different way? The Italian government's hardline stand may have kept its supporters happy, but in reality its crackdown policy couldn't work legally. It's been widely criticised for denying rights and compassion to people who were simply seeking a safer, better life. These people were allowed into Sicily some time ago. They're learning Italian in order to better assimilate into the community. Those that have made the long and dangerous journey to Italy are a cross-section of asylum seekers, refugees and migrants, but all have one thing in common: they want a better life. Ibrahima is from Guinea. His trip in a small boat across the Mediterranean 6 years ago was risky, but not as dangerous as some. He now speaks excellent Italian and is grateful to Italy, but has concerns.
More than one government. Some of them have helped people like me who have been here for a short time, and the current government doesn't help and makes life difficult. It's not right.
A happy end for some, but looking out at the central Mediterranean where more than 20,000 people have drowned making the perilous journey, you wonder how many more victims will the cruel seas of winter claim. Tony Bertley, Al Jazeera, Catania, Sicily.
Life around the globe for refugees and migrants fleeing war, persecution, climate change, and economic misfortune routinely find themselves in great peril along migrant trails. Perhaps the most perilous path anywhere through the Darien Gap, a wild, lawless stretch that straddles Colombia and Panama.
Where South America meets Central America lies one of the world's wildest jungles. It's roadless, lawless, and almost entirely uninhabited. Its name, the Darien Gap. Underneath the soaring jungle canopy, migrants from around the world risk death crossing the jungle in a desperate bid to reach the US and Canada. They have no map and no instructions on how to make it through one of the world's most dangerous migration routes.
I would like to send a message to anyone who is thinking of doing this route. It's very dangerous. If I knew this, I wouldn't have done it.
Many migrants spend a week or even 2 on this trail before they reach a village and safety. But these journeys started long before. Migrants from Asia, the Middle East, and Africa flew into Ecuador or Brazil, where visa requirements are somewhat lax. Haitians also use this route as a springboard north. But to get from Colombia to Panama, they have to cross the Darien Gap by foot. It's the only missing 66-mile break in the Pan American Highway from the tip of Argentina up to Alaska. We set out to join up with the migrant trail and reached a makeshift camp where smugglers wait for migrants. At dusk, a group of Cameroonians and Pakistanis arrived. They were exhausted and relieved to find the last spot on the trail where they can get hot food. Morning broke with torrential rain. The Darien is one of the wettest places on the planet. The environment could hardly be more different from the high mountains of Pakistan this group of friends call home.
The Taliban targeted our family from time to time. That is why I had to leave my country.
We packed our food for 5 days, and with guides we hired, followed the migrants as they set out, on a day-long ascent of a mountain ahead. The steep and slippery terrain was tough for everyone. Up the mountain, the smuggler the Cameroonians and Pakistanis hired demanded payment. After a steep descent, the group made it to this river. They were almost out of food. Before long, a large group of Haitians and Sri Lankans appeared. Jean Delegate, a father of two.
It's been 6 days that we're walking without stopping. The children cry of hunger. There's no food. There's nothing.
There was nothing else for them to do but try to go ahead. Dusk fell, and the Haitians made camp high above the river. It was hard to find wood dry enough to make a fire, and even harder to find food to cook. The night's catch, a few fish. Dawn broke after a night of heavy rain. They've barely slept.
They are soaking wet and very hungry, but in fact, we are stuck here for now. That's because overnight the rain made the river rise dramatically.
It was too high to cross. The rivers often pull children from their parents' arms and sweep migrants to their death. The river level dropped, and we finally set out again. Later, we were joined by 15 Bangladeshi men with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. They had been robbed 4 times on the trail of everything.
After another night of heavy rain, the river is very, very high. It's going to be risky to cross it, but we simply cannot wait any longer because we have run out of food.
Because the river was too high, we had to make a detour, winding up into the forest and dimming all hopes of reaching a settlement in Panama by night. The next day, minds were racing with one question: will we make it out of here? There were foreboding reminders of those who did not. But these migrants joined the legions of survivors crossing the Darien Gap. As the river opened up, a driver and his outboard canoe appeared. We were on our way, finally, to a village. This night, the group made its way out of the Darien Gap, but the rest of their journey is as opaque as the black waters ahead.